We just want to thank you so much for being here and give a little reminder that we are going to record the presentation so we can send that out to you so you all have it for review. And before we get started with our time with Bank Street, ECIC just wants to extend a warm welcome to our friends at Focus Hope, who are joining us in this granting process and are going to be doing this work in the Detroit area. So this is their first time with us at the Peer Learning community. So we just want to say hello and welcome and are so excited to have you here. So with that, we're going to turn it over to our friends at Bank Street College of Education, Liz and Tara, for our presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Nicole. Welcome all. I'm so glad to see you all here today again. For those of you who I didn't get to meet last time, I am Liz Hartline. I am the Director of Workforce Initiatives on the Learning Starts at Birth team at Bank Street College of Education, and we focus on policy and systems reform and supporting people and making a more equitable world. With me is Tara Dwyer, who is a national expert in apprenticeship and early childhood settings and an architect of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania's early childhood apprenticeship program. Today, we're going to be picking up our conversation from February about developing high quality mentorships in early childhood settings. So the way this is going to look is we will do a whole group check-in. Then we are very, very excited. Childcare Network, who is a member of this community, has agreed to share a bit about their story in developing their mentorship program. One of the biggest pieces we heard from y'all was that you would like to hear what this looks like in practice and what other people have done and what other people's experiences. And so Sebastian and Carla from Childcare Network are going to share a little bit with y'all. So we're so excited to have them. After that, we will break into small groups for some connection time and to discuss the pre-work. And then we're going to share a repository and some tools that we have created for you all. And then we'll close it up. Our objectives today are threefold. They are to identify strategies for getting input from employers, to discuss what powerful mentorships look like in action, and to access and to contribute a list of documents and resources that support employers in their mentorship efforts. So we have a lot to do today. So to kick us off today, we are really interested to hear how it is going. So we would like to hear in the chat, what is one thing that has come up for you with developing a high quality mentorship since our last session? This might be a problem you've run into, a question you've run into, a victory, a partnership, anything that has come up for you. And we would love to hear it in the chat. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Carrie says, design providers asking if mentors had to be prior apprentices and where to find them if the answer was yes. That is a really, really great question. The desire to create a group of mentors that learn from each other as leaders, perhaps their own learning community. Oh, I love that idea. I wonder if this network can be a space of connection to maybe create that. Just an idea. Sustainability, yes. Had a meeting with ECIC with WMW and Vibrant Futures, waiting to hear back about a grant. Lonnie tapped Dick's message. Anyone else would like to share anything that's come up for them? We go 1 more minute. thinking about how to evaluate the mentor experiences over time, thinking ahead, the same mentors continue to participate with a new cohort of apprentices. So that's a really interesting two things: thinking ahead about data, thinking ahead about assessment and evaluation, and also future planning. Great. Well, feel free to continue as we chat. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Tara to talk about our mentor teacher guide.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I appreciate those who are on camera. I know that you're not falling asleep then, and that's helpful for me. It keeps me engaged, I know that. So before we get started on today's content, we wanted to circle back to the mentor guide that we shared. Yay, thank you. We wanted to circle back to the mentor guide that we shared last session. We can also put a link into the chat for those who are new or have not yet downloaded the document. But this is a chance for us to spend a couple of minutes. We know you're living a busy life, just to kind of look at the guide and update any decisions or progress that's been made related to the topics we've covered. So last session, we really did a deep dive into the, really ironing out the goal of your apprenticeship, as well as how to engage your partners. So let me make sure we put a link into the chat box. There you go. I think that's the proper link. And feel free to download that so it's on your computer. And this way you can kind of circle back to that as you need to. So just take a couple of minutes. We're gonna start off with the goals. So if you have not filled out the goal section, take a minute and think about what problem you're trying to fix through your apprenticeship. If you have already identified what the goal of your model is, feel free to put it into the chat so we can share. And just to recap from last session, for those of you who weren't here, we talked a little bit about the criticalness of establishing that goal so that our partnerships are all on the same page. They understand that there's a shared vision for that. And then establishing the goal allows us to also identify the target apprentice who we're trying to create a pathway for, who we're serving, and in turn, that kind of helps us identify and pin down the kinds of employers we want to recruit, or the employers who might be willing to engage if that has been a challenge that they're also trying to fix. And also for those of you who are still writing your standards and thinking about what they might look like, it also helps us to identify the type of apprenticeship we might choose to register. So for example, if you're serving the incumbent workforce, you're going to want to make sure you're selecting a pathway or registering an apprenticeship pathway that allows for prior learning to be awarded, and allows for some of those hours that our incumbent workers have already completed on the job to be honored in that. So let me just check in with the chat. All right, looks like no goals have been ironed out in there. I appreciate that, though. I'm sure you're all filling in and making notes to circle back to your partnerships with around the goal. The other section we talked through were partnerships. So, like all apprenticeships, we know that employers are at the heart of it. And so while apprenticeship might be new to the profession is not, we are fully aware of what our needs are and what our goals are. So really taking time, not necessarily to list out who your partners are, but strategies to use while you're co-creating this model, ways to power share, and effective ways to engage. So we do know that this is a challenge. We're talking about a very scarcely funded and structured industry. And so we're going to take some time to fill out a Menti so you all can kind of share your ideas and your successes around how you have been able to engage your partners. So we do have a Menti that we're going to launch. And this is an opportunity for you to take a look at these discussion questions we have on our slide deck. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another one? There's another slide. Not yet. All right. All right. So do we have a Menti ready to go? Okay, great. So let's do that. The Menti will have questions for you to respond to. We wanted to be able to document this for you. You'll respond, and then this way we can kind of catalog all of these responses and get them to you. We will also use this to help design our office hours and think through some additional resources that may be helpful to you. So please, feel free to share out any strategies that have been helpful that you have used. I know in the needs assessment that ECIC did in January, we heard a couple of solutions folks had found in order to help engage with employers specifically. Partners had suggested that they go out to the programs, so they're not expecting the employers or the apprentices to come to them. They're actually going out to the programs. Another partner shared out that they were scheduling meetings far in advance. So as of January, they had all of their monthly meetings scheduled through May. I see virtual meetings have popped up. That's great. Makes it easier for people to sign in. Another partnership suggested that they subcontracted with a local ECE intermediary in order to help with those, making sure that folks were engaged in an authentic way. In-person visits we have, great. So this is this Menti code, but we do have other questions related to some of the challenges as well. Great, I love seeing these pop up. This is really a way for you to be able to kind of share out what has worked, and then that in turn helps other folks to think about how they can do this effectively. We know that each community is different, and so there is really no silver bullet to solving this challenge, and we want to allow for that flexibility. Ooh, lunch and learns, that's great. So feeding usually brings folks to the table, or offering meetings during lunchtime virtually is also very helpful. I think sometimes that's a quiet time at programs when there's nap. I see we have partnered with our business services team. Great. All right, so let's skip to the next question just to keep things moving. And we will make sure you get these after our session today. Great. So what are you wondering about when it comes to engaging employers? Oh, great. I see we have some responses in the chat box as well. What are you wondering about? Dine and learn. After hour sessions. Great. Nighttime sessions. Dinner sessions. That's great. To connect with home group providers. Yeah, home group providers have children all day, every day, and they could be particularly challenging to find a time that works. So I think that's a very creative solution. That's great. All right. I see one wonder is how to find the right time to meet with them, since they're working both before and after our work hours and may not have the energy to engage later in the evening. That's a great question. So we've talked a little bit about, nap time tends to be a time where folks are available. So checking in with employers when that might be happening. Is lunch an appropriate time? Really checking in with the providers or the employers you're working with. I've worked with groups where we had to poll folks to find out. Surprisingly, we found late afternoons were great a lot of the time. So it was just, so that they can, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, right before closing. Great. What other resources can I be connecting employers to as I'm building these relationships? Great. Go-to context. This is good. All right, we're going to let these wanderings linger and keep filling them in as things pop up. Like I said, these are the kinds of questions we like to hear, so we know what resources to share or content to follow up with. And our next question is, thank you. If you haven't engaged with employers, why not? So what have been the real barriers or challenges to this? Has it been time? Has it been ability? Has it been reaching them? I think sometimes also one of the things I've seen some partnerships struggle with in other places is the idea that we're trying to learn to speak two separate languages. So there's the early learning community who has one language, and then there's the workforce development folks who have another language. And, learning each other's language can take some time, but it definitely takes a deep connection. It's hard to sometimes own up that somebody doesn't fully understand what you're talking about. So, that's a challenge that we've seen navigated through, building those deep relationships and acknowledging it. Just saying that out loud can help to build those connections. I know that there's early educators who have like lists of acronyms, we call it the ABCs that they spell out all the time. And, it's very common in the profession to have to explain that. So, it goes both ways that we can kind of share some insight into the language that we're speaking, as well as learn from you the language that helps you. You'll hear me switch back and forth sometimes between employers and providers. That's another example. Within the community, a lot of times we use the term providers when we're talking about employers, but we know when we're talking to intermediaries and workforce folks, employers is the more used term. So just keep that in mind too when you're engaging with folks. All right, great. So the barrier has been timing that works best for all providers. Centers want nap time, homes want evenings. Yes, I've definitely seen that as well. It's challenging because of the home providers sometimes have very specific and unique needs. And so, I know one of the ways we solved that challenge in California was having very specific cohorts for home providers. Then it meant that the coursework was offered at the same time for the team. The content was relevant to their experience and their setting. And we didn't have to think about kind of making a one size fits all for everyone. Yeah, so the wages are so low and would be difficult to retain. Well, I mean, that's a very real challenge that we're faced. But our industry has existed for decades. And so just thinking creatively about the other assets that our profession can offer, and how to kind of keep folks who are here engaged and attract new ones, as we work towards getting the funding that our profession deserves. But that is so real. All right. Great. Feel free to keep uploading there. Thank you. All All right, so I'm going to now pass the mic over to Liz. Thank you for contributing and giving us the information that is helpful to hear about what you've done, where you've been, what you've learned so far, and any of the strategies you've used. We will be sure to make sure you get that information and it is helpful for you. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Tara. And without further ado, we are so excited to hear from Child Care Network. So this community-based organization, they play two roles. So they are both an intermediary and they're the host of standards and RTI provider. Their registered apprenticeship program has served 6 employers and 20 apprentices from the start. And with the help of awarding credit for prior learning, they will enroll 20 more in the coming weeks. So they are really in an expansion stage for sure. While their program is new, CCN has on the ground implementation experience in Michigan over the course of decades that may be helpful to you all. So we have Carla Mancini and Sebastian Betzer here, who are representing CCN. I would love for you both to introduce yourselves really quickly, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carla Mancini. I'm the Community Programs Director at Child Care Network.
And I'm Sebastian Betzer, and I am the Innovation Project Manager at Child Care Network.
All right, thanks you all. So this first question is for Carla. Can you provide us with an understanding of Child Care Network and your role in ECE apprenticeships?
Sure. So Child Care Network has been in business for over 50 years. Currently, we are serving families and childcare providers and our community members in a variety of different ways. So we provide scholarships to families who are struggling to pay for childcare. We're also the Southeast Resource Center, helping childcare providers with quality care and professional development. And we also facilitate several other programs in our community to help families, such as TriShare, family childcare networks with home providers, and CDA certifications and apprenticeships in our talent pipeline. Those are just some of the examples. So we actually started the process to become an intermediary many years ago, before the pandemic. And we worked with different community organizations to understand the process. And it was then that we realized that we could also become a registered training organization. So not only are we holding the standards and running the programs, but we're also providing the trainings ourselves. So we wanted to be able to produce and facilitate our own trainings so that we could tailor them to the needs of our community. And that was really important to our vision. And we'll get to a little bit to that later. So we became an intermediary and a sponsor in February of 23, but unfortunately we did not have the funds to run our program the way that we envisioned it until this project here in August of 2023. And as you said, since that time, we've registered 20 apprentices and 6 employers into the program, and we have a wait list just as long at this time. So funding for our unique program was a barrier from the beginning, and it will continue to be a barrier ongoing because of the way that we do run our program.
Great, thank you so much. I'm really interested in why y'all chose to pursue an ECE apprenticeship. Like why an apprenticeship? Why not a different model?
So when we had the vision at Child Care Network of running an apprenticeship program to help support the recruitment and retention of staff in early childhood settings, it seemed to bring together all the things that we knew were concerning in early childhood. So 2 of our programs at Child Care Network showed data that we needed to serve providers in a way that wasn't already being offered. So one is our early childhood talent pipeline. We create and we facilitate CDA cohorts in some of our counties, and many of our participants noted that they did not see themselves as college students at that time, or they were unable to enroll in college programs for a variety of reasons. So many of them noted that they weren't willing to take a CDA class in college, and we wanted to be able to address that in one way or another. So we discovered that through our CDA programs that as they took our classes, they were building the confidence and the readiness to actually become college students. And that kind of moved right into our vision for an apprenticeship. So some of them have even gone on to achieve their master's degrees now, which is amazing. Coming in as I am not a college student, but now I have a master's degree. You can't hope for anything better than that. So the other data that we collected from another program where we provided some consultation to childcare providers was that we discovered when new staff members came into early childhood, if they were not given the foundational knowledge that they needed to feel safe and successful in a classroom, they often left the field or the employer within 90 days of employment. So we discovered we have two problems here that we need to resolve, and the apprenticeship just may do that for us. So we need to stabilize the childcare business with the staff that they already have in place, and we need to educate and build confidence in the staff that are already there in order to retain employed and gain promotions. So these things were the foundation of our vision for the apprenticeship program.
I love that story. Thank you so much, Carla. I love the idea of someone who doesn't identify as a college student getting their master's. It's such like a powerful story. So this next question is for Sebastian. So about the standards, how much of your mentor project was ironed out before you submitted your standards? And is there anything you would have addressed given what you know now?
Yes, definitely. So I think where we started out, our primary objective was to get our apprenticeship model off the ground and running. And so one thing that we know from working with childcare providers is the immense variety in types of programs. So as Carla was pointing out, it's really important for us to retain and respect the employees of childcare programs that have put a lot of time in, but maybe don't have a particular credential to attain, a lead teacher certification or whatever else they may be working toward. And so for us, the primary objective was to be as open as possible. So in answer to the first part of your question, how much was ironed out ahead of time? There wasn't a ton ironed out. We knew a couple of things for sure. We knew that we wanted to respect the amount of time that people had put into programs. And we knew that we wanted to make sure that it was valuable for them to be a mentor. And so for us, we knew right from the get-go that we wanted them to be able to use their time as being a mentor to get them training hours and things that benefit them tangibly. And then, of course, with the ECIC funding, we were able to do stipends as well. So we're looking at how we can continue the financial incentive and work with our programs, because our programs are all different in terms of what funds they have available. So we're trying to look at that for a sustainability piece. And so what would we address given what we know now? I think we would keep things as open as we can to be responsive to context, but making sure that those key pieces are there about, again, making it easy for the mentor to gain additional benefits as part of being a mentor. And we want to work toward that recognition across the field in terms of what it means to be a mentor and why that's so important.
Thank you. Kind of going on that, what it means in these bigger picture, tell us a little bit about how you have developed your vision for your apprenticeship program and how you have used that to gain support from your partners.
Yeah, so I'd say for us, it always comes back to those principles, because we're working on we're working with programs that vary so widely. So that is our first principle, is to remember that context varies widely. So the standards need to be such that they can allow for listening and then providing specific barrier supports based on what you're hearing back from the director, the mentor, and the apprentice. So a lot of listening is part of the way that we're developing our apprenticeship program as we go. The next principle is to always, again, it's kind of connected, is to always work on understanding how to impact the barriers in a tangible way. So we know that people are leaving the field for many reasons. We know that people might be leaving the field for pay. We know that we've heard a lot about workforce challenges, workplace challenges. And so we understand that to really achieve our goal of supporting the entire workforce, we have to kind of work from multiple angles. So we need to help directors if they are facing challenges in their program. with retention. We need to look at like what is the experience like for a new hire, because we know that things outside of the apprenticeship track might be reasons that they leave. We don't want, we want to support the retention broadly. So we support our directors with our frequent check-ins that we have, so that we're working always toward what are causing particular barriers for people. And then on the other side of it, it's always making sure that we're also focusing on the apprentices. What are their barriers specifically? Can we connect with Michigan Works? Can we connect them with additional learning supports? So a lot of the apprentices in our first cohort have learning disabilities, additional challenges that impact the way that they move through our RTI. And so we make sure that we can get them those barriers addressed, again, with various partners or with things that we can source internally. And then finally, our final principle is remembering that the mentors are an X factor of the apprenticeship program. We don't control the mentors, but they are a huge part of the apprentice's experience. And so for us, it's always about elevating those mentors. And we do that by making sure that during our check-in process, the mentors are part of that. So though we're still shaping what our mentorship program looks like and how we develop the mentors, we started from a place of making sure that we always have a touch point with them so that we can understand very specifically where they're at, even though they might have different levels of experience or credentialing or experience being a mentor or comfort level with being a mentor, so we can begin to address those things as we get that feedback.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really, and there's so much there. We could go for hours about that. I'm noticing this theme of partnership in your approach and in CCN approach. And I would like to hear a little bit about how, can you speak to the importance of your partnerships and how you have leveraged various partnerships along the way?
Yeah, definitely. So again, I think the main partnership, we view all of our directors as partners in the work. So there is a when we're working on our when we're getting the program set up with them, so when we're having our initial meetings, there's a lot of viewing them as a partner. So it's really about understanding what's very specific to their program, what's doable, what is the class structure, what does the class structure look like, how many people are eligible to be mentors in the first place, is there a plan for supporting those mentors so that they can gain an additional additional pay, additional recognition for that additional work? How can we help with that? Are there stipends available, and so on? So the partnership there is really important because it allows everybody in the program to kind of be on the same page. And so one thing I know from these learning communities that we've talked about is that there's different levels of experience working with early childhood. So for me, I think it was a really important aspect of our partnerships that I was able to learn a lot about the context of ECE from those meetings and from being able to speak directly with people to understand what things that they needed, they identified as things that would boost their program. And then I think the other aspect of partnership is making sure that we look for partners like Michigan Works and WCC to find ways to build onto our program the things that are going to help apprenticeship launch and move forward over the years from something that's like really new, what is this in the field, to something that's really recognized broadly. And we can only do that through partnership, I would say.
Thank you. We were talking a lot about the mentors and the mentor experience, and what resource or tool has impacted your mentor experience the most?
Yeah, so we're still, as I did mention, we're still rolling out what we would consider to be like our standardized mentor experience. So at the moment, there have been things that we tried to focus on that we can do right away. So we made sure that we could help them to gain training hours, so they are able to attend classes with the apprentice, so that they have they're on the same page about what the apprentice is learning. And the idea being that when they're able to attend those, it might facilitate additional conversation around, hey, how does this training that we just did apply to our specific center? We also wanted to begin working on, so as far as like resources, I definitely want to shout out ECIC and Bank Street and other exemplars in the ECE workforce research space, because it helps us guide those conversations with directors about, okay, this is creating a, potentially a new role, or a new envisioning a new role within their center. How can we follow best practices or support them following best practices when it comes to recognizing that with pay, or even further than that, recognizing that in the Michigan ECE career pathway, we know that's something that requires a lot of advocacy and a lot of talking about these things and being on the same page. So I think those are the resources we use.
Last question. What have you learned about mentorship and apprenticeships, I guess, as you grow, that you wish you had known 1 year ago?
Yeah, I think as an intermediary, we've learned, I think we view our apprenticeship program in this first iteration of it very much as a pilot program. So we're focused on learning as much as we possibly can. I think the main thing that jumps out right away is the diversity of the programs and the diversity of the apprentices, because it really does require, or we've learned this process requires so much listening and so much creativity, really, when it comes to supporting the barriers that that people come across. And so you can only really do that you can only really answer that need with really good partnerships for the things that you don't know so well. So a lot of the Michigan Works support that we get are things that's a foreign world to us, but it helps us when we are able to work with those partners. And I also think that we're realizing how much work there is to do around properly recognizing both mentors and apprentices for this program that they're going through. So pay, title, and also the recognition within the career pathway. So as we go into round 2 of this, we're really focusing on how can we make sure that we have enough of the external support to lend whatever achievement that they've made in as both a mentor and an apprentice are reflected properly and respected by the Michigan early childhood licensing structure and the community broadly.
Thank you so much. This is all really helpful and interesting. We have a few minutes for questions for Carl and Sebastian. Does anyone have any questions? You can go ahead and come off mute or put them in the chat if that's more comfortable for you.
Hi, I have a question. It's Beth from Focus Hope. So I think, Sebastian, I heard you say something that was kind of surprising to me, that the apprentices are not only concerned with their pay, but also their title. So do you have it built in that they get different titles based on where they are in in terms of the apprenticeship?
That actually comes back to what we were talking about as well, about the partnerships that we have to have with our directors. So it's really, really, as an intermediary where we have multiple different sites, some programs are great. We have a really well developed staffing structure, right? I could say okay, this much experience gets you to this role. And so for them, it was much easier. They would say oh, cool, we'll just add this position in here. This is what it is. Everyone understands. And then others, it's more difficult. They haven't had that structure, and we want to be able to help them to build that over time. And so it's really, I think some of those things benefit the workforce as a whole anyway. And so we try to have that conversation with the directors, this will benefit everybody in your program, to really clearly have this visual, basically this scaffold for everybody. And so we help them to develop that by giving them resources to show them how that has been done. We also have worked in prior years with directors around workplace improvements that they can make via consultation. And so we bring in some of that experience, and we say, look, this is how you might do something like this and why it's beneficial. And I think a lot of the time what we've learned is that really it's directors are very willing to do that. It's just sometimes intimidating to start that process without the additional guides or without the additional consultation.
Thanks. If I can get a little more clarification. So are you saying that it sounds like you're saying that those title changes are important to the apprentices, but they the directors of the programs are the ones who are deciding when those titles change. You're not making it uniform as part of the apprenticeship. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and just curiously, because we're new, did you find that that the directors were resistant to you saying, like, being the overlords and saying, okay, at this point, everybody's going to be called an X? Did you try that and they didn't accept it?
So I would say that that was, again, part of that early discussion. I don't think anyone was like firmly against. I think it was more a sense of, and Carla can speak to this too, when we were meeting with programs, there was more of a sense of some programs would have a lot further to go to achieve that than others. And we wanted, our primary focus was like, yeah, we want to sign them on and get them going. And we figured that, or we decided as part of our program strategy that we would scaffold them and work with those programs to achieve that over time. So it was less of a like, we don't want to do this, and more of a, this might take longer for us to get our information in a row and prepare this and feel comfortable sharing it with our staff. We maybe need to go back and look at, in some cases, like what all of our staff, where they would fall on such a thing, or, those additional decisions. So it was really more about timing it out.
Thank you.
That was really great. Thank you again to Carla and Sebastian. And if you all have any more questions for them, then please put them in the chat and we can circle back to them by the end of this time together, or perhaps we can connect you all with childcare networks in the future. So I am going to head it over back to Tara. Tara, take it away.
Thank you. All right, so we've talked at you for a little bit. We're gonna break off into small groups shortly, but I'm gonna get us kind of teed up and ready for that conversation first. So first of all, I appreciate CCN really leaning into what you're doing today versus what you think you can be doing in the future, and really approaching their apprenticeship with this like continuous quality improvement lens. Just the idea that, it's an ever evolving process. So I put that out there because both today and in the pre-work, you've all had the chance to learn more about apprenticeships, that ECE apprenticeships specifically, that have been being implemented in different parts of the country. And, while I said earlier, there is no silver bullet, there's no recipe card we can give you to say, here's what goes into a successful ECE apprenticeship. There are elements that can be extracted from all of the great models we're learning from and hearing about. And so I just kind of wanted to plant that seed in your thinking around the conversation we're going to have. So the homework that we sent out, or the pre-reading, consisted of either, well, first of all, raise your hand if you did the reading. Great, thank you. Or, tell me through an emoji or something. I'm just curious at who preferred the reading over the webinar. And so if you did, the webinar or watch the recording that we sent out, send another hands up or an emoji. Great. Some overachievers did both. I appreciate that as well. Okay, it's just helpful for us to get a feel for what the preferred resource might be. But either way, whether or not you did the reading or the webinar, or you didn't have a chance to do either, the conversation in your group, in your small groups, will allow for that flexibility. We're starting to shift into what you will apply from what you're hearing. So even if you just lean into what you just heard CCN talk through, this is your chance to meet with your peers, talk about what you're thinking about, and how maybe what you've been hearing can help to influence your model. So we have the questions here. We're going to also do small breakout groups. We heard your feedback last time. Folks wanted to be able to build consistent relationships. So we're going to make the small groups the same as what they were, with some new partners, of course, will be added, but you'll have the chance to meet with your previous group again. But instead of responding through a mentee, we're going to ask that you do a note catcher. So Liz will pop into the small groups and share the note catcher technique with you. So you have a link to the resource to be able to write down some of the conversations that's happening in the group. So these are your big think about questions. What are you noticing regarding mentorships in ECE? What can you imagine taking from these examples and applying to your model? What information is still missing? And what are you considering a framework for your mentorship? And again, we're going to do small groups. Liz will pop in with the note catcher. And the reason why we're using the note catcher is so that we can help cross-pollinate some of your great ideas back and forth across groups. All right, so I think we're ready for our small groups if there aren't any questions. All right, we're going to do small groups for about 20 minutes.
Welcome back to all of you. So in the interest of time, I would like the reporter from each group just to share out in the chat a little bit about their group's conversation. So that could be highlights, that could be answers to the questions, that could be a brief summary of what you all talked about. Anything of those things that I just mentioned that feels relevant. We were going to have everyone share out, but we think this will be a more judicious use of time. We are really hope that you guys had some good connection time in there. Let's see. Looks like Beth is starting to share a little bit. I'm gonna share my screen. And I think while y'all are doing that, I'm going to introduce something completely different. Is that Monty Python? And now onto something completely different. So we heard that most of you all were like, hi, we need some stuff. And so other people are like, I have stuff. So we have created a Google folder for you all to put in resources that you are willing to share with others in the community. This is not required. These are not for ECIC's review. ECIC is not collecting these, they're not assessing these. This is not a grant condition. This is just a repository for your use. I just put the link in the chat and you should be able to access that. So some documents that you all might decide to put in there might be sample work schedules or Appendix A, sample contracts or letters of agreements, onboarding the plan for mentors and employers or supervisors, online learning platforms for the mentors, shared professional learning content, competencies or opportunities for mentors, and sample contracts for field coaches and mentors. You'll also see in that folder a link with the things that we as Bank Street have shared with you all. And we will add these things to that. Oh, it takes you to a note catcher session 2 folder. So let me stop sharing really quickly to make sure that I can put the correct link back in the chat. I am so sorry about that. ECIC. Okay, well, we will get you the link. I will. Tara, do you mind getting the link for them while I continue to explain? So Tara's going to get the link. I don't know why my link is copying the same link, probably because I copied and pasted so many times. So for those of you all who use Google Drive before, this next slide is going to be intuitive, but we understand that many people have not used Google Drive. So if you're going to share something in the Google Drive, we are assuming that this is free for others to look at and to use and to just, you know, access as they wish. People might edit it. If you have any restrictions on how, on documents that you share in here, then I would ask that you put those very clearly on the top of the document so that people know. But if you want to share a document, you're going to click on the folder, and then you're going to go into the RAP shared resources. And right there, we already have two. You're going to click on this little thing up in the corner, the new, and then you're going to go to file upload. You're going to stick the file in there. And then you are going to make sure that in this little person thing on the very far right, I will share my screen for you in a second to show you how to get to this. It says anyone with the link can view. Otherwise, if that doesn't happen, then you will be in a situation where you are getting requests from people that you don't know asking to view your documents, and you don't probably want to do that. So I'm going to show you what that is in live time, and this slide will live in there as well. So we're right here. You would click here, and then you're going to go new, file upload. I'm going to collect my file. And then it's there. And then if I want that to be shared with people, then I need to go to here, share. And anyone with the link can edit, but if I don't want them to edit, then I need to change it to view. I know this is a lot of stuff. I know. If you have any questions, please reach out, please ask us. And if you don't ever put anything in here, that's fine. You know that this exists for you all to live in. So is the link live and accessible now? Great, perfect.
Yeah, it should be.
Are there any questions about this folder or using it? Like I said, this is really a tool for you all. This is something that you all asked for. So we thought it was a better way to host something to share. And ECIC does not use, their platform is not Google. So it's a little more difficult for them to do so. So, okay. Tara, I'm going to hand it back over to you. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. Thank you. All right,
Okay.
everyone, we're in the home stretch. I am going to kind of quickly recap some of the resources we sent out last time, just so we can kind of give you a quick overview and you could decide whether or not that's something to go back to look at. And then we're going to talk about next session. So the first, if you notice with the homework this time, we sent you something to discuss with the group today. And then we also sent you some resources that we thought might be helpful. We heard your feedback and some of the questions that were popping up. So we wanted to get you what you needed. But we also figured since this is a mentorship learning community, we didn't want to lean too hard into apprenticeship generally. So in that shared Google Drive, you can find links, or you can find these documents as well if you want to give that a whirl. The first document we wanted to share out is the Growing Strategies for Childcare Workforce. That was put out through the Nonpartisan Center, and essentially it catalogs all of the nation's ECE apprenticeships that are up and running. They're registered already. Some of them are registered at the state level for statewide use, and some are regional. Fun fact, there are only 7 states in the United States that do not have a registered ECE apprenticeship up and running right now. So, you know, as we're moving forward, I think that's pretty, pretty impressive to think about how, like, in 2015 there was like a handful, maybe 5 or 6 ECE apprenticeships that were up and running, and so the idea that now we're moving towards more states than not are using them. So that document is helpful for anyone who's curious about how folks are layering and braiding funding, and also the kinds of models that are being used in different states. There's also an accompanying webinar that goes along with that. In the assignment we sent out, there was also a breakdown of the different content areas. So I think we pointed out there's the YMCA overview. That's a very large apprenticeship program operating out of California. I think they've graduated about 300 apprentices, and I think they have 5 different pathways established. That model in and of itself is talked about at 1437. There's additional information about the family childcare model in Rhode Island, which we talked a little bit about last session, a survey of ECE apprenticeships of what's going on out there. And then, of course, something that might be really helpful to look at is, the panel each took a turn to talk about what their very first steps were. So that's at 40 minutes, but I invite you to take a look at that. And if articulation of the CDA is something you're curious about, or your higher ed partners are curious about, or your community based orgs are curious about, you can feel free to share that. That's discussed in there as well. The second document we shared is the ECE response to the Department of Labor's Quick Start Guide. So this is an apprenticeship quick start guide. It was born out of a learning community that existed from 2019 until 2022. The learning community was filled with implementers from across the country that were doing an ECE apprenticeship in different formats. And essentially we identified common threads that were working across employers, settings, and state lines. So that apprenticeship quick start guide is a really great tool for you to get started, but it's also, I think, a helpful tool to help you find language to describe, how apprenticeships work, and to kind of make sure that your whole team is on the same page as far as language. Did anybody take a chance or have a chance to look at these documents? And does anybody want to share anything about them? All right. So I wanted to take the chance to remind you about our office hours next week, and let you know that we are hoping, we have a poll too to launch. So we really wanted to be intentional about how we're spending our office hour time moving forward. We have sessions beyond this learning community, and so those will continue until June. So we are going to launch a poll that will help us to understand how you would like to spend that time. And I think, Christina, we can do that now as I'm talking, if you have that ready to go. And this poll will just kind of get a pulse for where everybody is, and we'll share that out. Now that we have the Google Drive, we are considering a couple different format options for our office hours. It can continue to be the Q&A like we've been doing, or discussions, or we can have work groups where maybe there's a work group that wants to focus on, roles and responsibilities of the mentor. And then we could put you into a small group with folks who want to work on that. Or maybe there's another group of folks who really want to work on the standards and ironing out some of their, work schedules. And so there's a couple of different options, and it looks like we're still waiting.
Yeah, we have about 50% that have completed it.
Oh, great. Great.
Just have some responses still coming through really quick.
Perfect.
Give it about 30 more seconds, and then I will end the poll so we can kind of see where everybody's at with this.
Great. And that hour is really, it's a save time. It's probably very helpful to have that when you're thinking about the work that you're doing, to be able to learn from your peers. And so we just want to maximize how helpful that is for you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think there was a conflict for this week and next week. So I appreciate you letting us know, Carrie. All right. Okay, so it looks like folks are on the point of creating documents with their partnerships, which is great. I love the idea of co-collaboration on that. It looks like there's about a split. Also, 40% are interested in thinking about discussion and making time to work on the documents. And yeah, as much co-creating as possible. This was helpful. Thank you. It looks like, you know, there's not a clear response, so we can kind of take it as we want. Each session maybe have a little bit of both. So next week is our office hour, and we will be leaning into the next couple of topics that are in our mentor guide, which are the mentor framework and then mentor qualifications. And it's really difficult to talk about mentor qualifications without also thinking about the professional learning that will be supplied to your mentors. A lot of times the resources and what is available for the professional learning will help you to decide what your qualifications really need to be and what skills are missing. So it's good to decide on those two factors at the same time. So that's what we'll be leaning into next week. And finally, we want to ask you the question and take some time right now for you to kind of, before you go back to your busy life, take some time for you right now to think about your next steps. So here you can see the question. So using some of the information gained today, share one example of how you will be supporting the design and implementation of your mentor program in the next couple of weeks.
And don't log off after you answer. ECIC has some closing announcements.
Yeah. Mentor stipends. Great. I'm glad you got more information on what is needed for your mentor stipends. There's also a section in the reading, if you didn't get to it, that talks about some of the incentives and supports that folks used. That might be helpful too. Thank you, Carrie. Anybody else want to share what they're doing? Great. I see you, Dick. I am in the process of scheduling a half-day convening for the center. I love it. They're all pouring in. I have to scroll up to see. And this will be on the agenda for discussion. Great. Looks like people will be using information to take back to the team to further develop our plan and better support mentors. That's great. And just to be clear, that is really the goal, right? The goal is to co-create and power share. Our intention is to be able to kind of plant some seeds with you during this hour and a half, and then have you bring that new information back to your team. Of course, everything should be kind of tweaked for your folks, and so that it best fits with what your goals and your community needs. All right, so on that note, I'm gonna thank you all. Feel free to keep putting things into the chat. I'm gonna thank you all for participating today, keeping it moving quickly, and I will hopefully see many of you next week at the office hours.
Perfect. And before we all head off, so just a couple of closing announcements from ECIC. So I'm putting a quick link in the chat here, which is just like our post-learning survey, just a few questions to gather some feedback from you all, how we can better support you as we continue these learning sessions. Additionally, as it was already mentioned, we do have our office hours scheduled for next Tuesday at 1 p.m. If you're able to make it, completely optional, but we do welcome any questions that are lingering or follow up from what we've shared today. And then we quickly mentioned this about the Google Drive that we created for you all, but we are currently working with the Michigan Association for the Education of Young Children, otherwise known as MIAEYC, on the development of statewide marketing materials for early care and education registered apprenticeship programs. So part of that Google Drive request, if you have any marketing materials that you currently use with your employers or for apprentices that you feel might be valuable for us to kind of take a look at and see what everybody's sharing, that would be helpful to bring back to MIAYC just as we kind of develop those statewide materials. So yeah, please feel free to share whatever you're able to in that Google Drive. Other than that, we thank you all for being here today, and we definitely look forward to ongoing collaboration. Thank you.
So Christina, was there a separate link or that shared Google folder that you would like those materials in?
Just that same one that we had shared earlier, Darren.
Okay, perfect.
To access that, yep, we created a separate folder in there for the marketing materials themselves.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking.